I apologize. I think I was on mute this whole time. In any event, I'd like to somebody ask for approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 25th. Also, I want to remind everybody from the public, especially participating, this meeting is being recorded. Okay, Stephanie, would you make a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Michelle, could you second that? John, could you second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's approved. And with that, we'll move on to the report of our Chief Executive, Catherine Kelman. Catherine, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Lechtwin, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As has become customary, I'd ask for a moment of silence for the following former employees: Dispatcher Mary Holt, Off-Board Fare Collector Jean Westmore, Painter Penny Thomas, and Operator Theron Miles. Thank you. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Carnegie Station Improvement Project, which will give us the ability to add 200 parking spaces and opportunities for transit-oriented development in a growing area. And as a newcomer to Pittsburgh, did I say that right? Carnegie, correct? I'll make sure I got it the right way.
Yep.
Good. Through a variety of in-person and more recently online public meetings, we've proposed a design that includes pedestrian amenities and public areas, ADA parking and a drop-off area, layover space for 10 to 15 buses, driver rest facilities, and electric bus charging stations, in addition to 430-space parking garage and TOD opportunities that better connect the site with downtown Carnegie. We secured a congestion mitigation and air quality improvement program funding and matching funds to help complete this $13 million project. I'd like to take a moment quickly to thank the Carnegie Borough, council members, and members of the community who provided input and support for this project. Later this year, planning will begin on an East Busway infill station. For those not familiar with this project, Port Authority received an FTA grant for $680,000 to help redesign the Wilkinsburg station on the East Busway to better serve riders, create TOD opportunities, and explore additional stations between the Wilkinsburg and the Neville Street ramp to help maximize ridership. Additionally, we're continuing work on our long-range plan. We kicked it off in January. A plan's called Next Transit, and the team has been incredibly busy throughout the year and especially the last few weeks. The project plan is designed in stages, which we're calling themes, and in theme 2, the Next Transit team met with over 170 participants and received 500 written comments, 2,000 website engagements, and nearly 800 completed surveys. Now, I will tell you, back in February, when we had to start canceling our face-to-face meetings, I had a lot of concern on what this was going to do with our planning process. You know, as a transit veteran, we live and die by our public meetings where we can go out and speak to people face-to-face. And I was very concerned we were going to only get access or feedback from folks who had great internet access at home. And I want to give a lot of credit to our friends at Michael Baker and our amazing planning team, because I could not have been more wrong. As we have migrated to online meetings, this removes the need for folks to plan their entire evening, afternoon, whichever day, around how they're going to get to a meeting, who's going to handle their child care, how they're going to process the information and get back with us. So we've actually had a lot more feedback from a much broader cross-section of folks here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. So when I say website engagements and 800 completed surveys, these are really broad-based feedback tools, and we're really, really happy to see it moving this way. We're now gearing up for theme 3, which is how can public transit get you there, which will include at least 2 to 3 online meetings and additional public engagement. So you may see our Next Transit team outside of Penn Mac. You may see them at the Rankin Community Center. You may see them in Market Square. We're out talking to folks, and again, the online feedback has been really, really great. As many of you know, the pandemic has had a huge impact on transit around the country, not just how we get information, but our ridership, our funding. Port Authority has not been immune. Although our ridership continues to be down about 65%, because of vehicle capacity limits, we're hitting this number. We're seeing overcrowding on some trips throughout the day. And in fact, yesterday I was honored to join a group of our operators who we are recognizing the second year in a row are operators who have the greatest number of commendation. It's a hard job, and we should recognize their great work. And many of these operators were asking us to consider changing these caps because so many people are trying to access our service, and they don't want to be in the situation where somebody misses a trip to work or the last trip of the night because we're looking at distancing issues. In response to our situations, in August, our service planning team began looking at data and developed a plan to ensure we can add extra trips on the routes that need it by borrowing service from routes which don't need that so much. So, for instance, many of our commuter routes are down at 10% of their ridership. If we can free those buses up, we can get to routes that are at 65 to 70% and ensure there's adequate spacing so folks can get to where they're going. It's a very delicate process, but I do think our staff has found the right balance. This plan will allow for more flexibility as we'll have more operators on unassigned regular work so they can fill in when we need an additional trip, which can help our out-of-service numbers. We're also adding service to a handful of our routes to provide greater access to communities on weekends. This has been an ongoing plan for the past few years, and ideally you will continue to see those investments going on throughout our region. These new adjustments will go into effect November 22nd, and details for all these changes are available on the website. Initiatives like this show our commitment to being as flexible as possible in the face of the pandemic and moving forward on all these programs which are so important to our community. And despite funding uncertainties, we are not standing still. We continue every day to work to improve accessibility throughout our region, from the service adjustments we've discussed to bringing on our first director of equity so we can get our hands around how we as an agency inside and out can support a more equitable region. We continue to move forward in this crazy year that is 2020. As I've said before, CARES Act funding will get us through the end of this fiscal year, and we know that much. But beyond that, provided that fare revenues continue to stay down and state subsidies don't return to normal, the future is just simply unknown for us. So as we plan moving forward, we're looking at a whole bunch of different contingencies. We are very, very hopeful that Congress will make additional funding available for public transit. Our local representatives and state senators have done an excellent job in getting our first round of CARES funding, and we will continue to work with the American Public Transportation Association and our friends in Washington to ensure we can continue to provide and improve our critical service and continue to move Allegheny County forward. It sounds trite, but the work we're doing is too important for us not to fight for this investment. Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions, those conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions? Just want to congratulate you and the whole team on the tremendous work you're doing, given these trying times. Really, thank you, Catherine.
We have a great team, and I'm proud to be here.
Great. Then, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the report of the Performance and Oversight Committee from its chair, Michelle Zamianik.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, board members and everyone on the call this morning and staff. And I agree with Mr. Letwin. So yes, congratulations to Catherine and the staff. I mean, you're doing a super job, and these are difficult times. So the Performance Oversight Committee met last week via WebEx, and I have 6 resolutions for your consideration this morning. The committee first reviewed 3 procurement items and determined the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures. The price is fair and reasonable, the bidders to be responsible, and the bids responsive. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends the award of bids listed in the resolution for the total amount of approximately $1.7 million. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Austin, can you make that motion? Austin?
So moved.
Hey, Jen, would you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Greg O'Hare presented the next resolution seeking authorization to award construction contracts for the South Hills Village Rail Center Pit Restoration Project. The work includes concrete approach and pit restoration, steel rail and support replacement, protective floor coating, compressed air piping and drainage, improvements with hot water supply modifications, pit lighting improvements, and new emergency shutoff system. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends awarding the general construction contract to J.T. Thorpe & Sons Incorporated in the amount of $9,229,069.53. The plumbing construction contract awarded to W.G. Tomco Incorporated in the amount of $626,666. And the electrical construction contract to Merit Electrical Group Incorporated in the amount of $1,328,000, all subject to completing pre-award requirements. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Ann, could you make that motion?
So moved.
Lori, could you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Ritchie presented the next resolution seeking authorization to enter into agreements and to provide general marketing services in the categories of advertising, marketing and promotion, public relations, community outreach, market research, direct mail distribution, and video productions. The agreements will be for 4 years for the not to exceed amount of $5,650,000 plus one possible option year. The 6 highest ranking proposers are Red House Communications for the advertising, marketing and promotion and public relations categories, the Gatesman Incorporated for the community outreach category, Campos Market Research and WBA Research for the market research category, Direct Mail Service and Alpha Graphics for the direct mail distribution category, and Cut and Run Productions for the video production category. Mr. Ritchie noted at the meeting that all but one of the 6 firms is either a registered DBE, WBE, or MBE. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends entering into agreements with the 6 highest ranking proposers in the designated categories. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board to approve this resolution.
Jessica, could you make that motion?
So moved.
Jim, are you on? Senator Brewster?
I'll second it, Jeff.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, I didn't see whether he was on or not. Appreciate that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, and then please let the record note that I'm abstaining because I have a conflict. Okay, that one is approved.
Thank you. Mr. Setra presented the next resolution seeking authorization to extend and amend agreements for medical and vocational case management services. In December 2016, the authority's board authorized the award of agreements to Gen X Services LLC, Disability Care Management Professionals of Western Pennsylvania Incorporated, Allegiant Managed Care Incorporated, and Wellco Rehab Incorporated to provide the services of an initial term of 3 years for a total not to exceed amount of $300,000 to be allocated on an as-needed basis through task-specific work orders. The agreements also contain 2 additional option years that can be exercised by the authority in its sole discretion. In September 2019, the authority's board authorized the exercise of the first option year, extending the term of the agreements to November 30th, 2020 at no increase of the previously authorized not to exceed amount. It was noted at the meeting that the Wellco Rehab advised the authority that they did not wish to extend their agreement due to key personnel retirements. The services performed by the other 3 firms have been satisfactory and in compliance with the agreements. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends extending the agreements through November 2021 with no increase in the previously authorized not to exceed amount. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Jen, will you make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Ann, could you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Setra presented the next resolution seeking authorization to extend and amend an agreement to provide real estate consulting services. In September 2017, the board authorized the authority to enter into an agreement with Interstate Acquisition Services, a division of Century Engineering, to provide expertise and technical support for all aspects of Port Authority's real estate interests. The original agreement was for 3 years and included 2 option years. The Performance Oversight Committee recommends exercising the first option year through December 31st, 2021, and to increase the not to exceed amount by $450,000 to $1,512,000. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Lori, would you make that motion?
So moved.
Stephanie, could you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Shank presented the final resolution seeking authorization to enter into a First Amendment to the Designated Services Agreement with the Pittsburgh Public Schools. In May 2019, following successful pilot testing, Port Authority's board authorized the authority to enter into an agreement with Pittsburgh Public Schools to transition students from monthly paper flash passes to the Pittsburgh Public School issued identification cards compatible to Port Authority's Connect card system. Due to COVID-19 greatly affecting the current academic year, with online classes through the end of October and staggered in-school classes beginning in November, the Performance Oversight Committee recommends a temporary amendment between the parties for Port Authority to charge the Pittsburgh Public Schools one base fare per card tap versus the monthly pass rate. Mr. Shank noted that the staff will continue to review usage and adjust for monthly passes where still applicable for some student riders. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Jessica, can you make that motion?
So moved.
John, would you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the report of the Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee from our chair, John Tague.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members and stakeholders. The Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee met last week. I have 3 updates for the board. Now, Catherine had talked about the Carnegie Station and Next Transit, so there might be some repetition to it. Maura Egler, Transit-Oriented Community Project Manager, provided an update on the Carnegie Station and Park and Ride planning process. The budget, CMAC, or Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant, funds of $6.5 million with a 50% state and local match have been set aside for the project for a total project budget of $13 million. Public outreach. There were 2 public meetings held on August 24th and September 24th. All of the public outreach was done virtually due to COVID-19. Through public feedback, we were able to gather the top priorities and concerns of the community. Features and topics discussed included better access for pedestrians, cyclists, those dropping off or picking up people at the station, and pedestrian safety and comfort, including lighting and protection from weather. How a portion of this site could be set aside for future transit-oriented development, green space, and community use. The look and feel of the parking structure within the context of the local neighborhood. Flexibility of sustainable design features such as solar panels and battery electric bus charging. The public outreach, even though only online, was thorough and productive, and those who participated were supportive of the conceptual design that was chosen for the site, which includes a new parking structure with an additional 200 plus parking spaces, up to 70,000 square feet of future development, and a bus layover facility with capacity for up to 10 to 15 buses with an operator, rest, and lunchroom. The project is now ready for engineering to develop construction documents subject to any changes to the current planning funding. The second thing is Next Transit. Amy Silverman, Director of Planning, provided an update on Next Transit, Port Authority's 25-year long-range plan. Over the summer, the Port Authority did a tremendous amount of public outreach given the pandemic and not being able to host traditional in-person public meetings. The team held 6 online public meetings with over 170 attendees, 29 pop-up micro engagements in the field with safety precautions in place, and conducted a public survey to find out riders' values and perceptions of existing transit. Additional efforts were made to ensure that we were heard from residents in low or income communities. We went into grocery stores, food bank pickups, and transit stops where we were able to see significant ridership. From the value survey, we learned that riders and the general public most highly value accessibility, affordability, and efficiency in their transit system. Sustainability and equity were also highly ranked amongst our stakeholders and also internal staff who also took the survey. What wasn't working for them, transit gaps. We received a lot of feedback about transit gaps in the second part of the survey, which we are still compiling. But initial responses indicate that many riders and non-riders would like to see service in more places, better infrastructure like transit shelters to support service, easier access to transfers, fares, and frequent service, a better physical environment to support transit by way of safe sidewalk networks. Many respondents who visited the pop-up tents in the field were happy to see and hear from us and to learn that we are taking steps to ensure their thoughts are included in our planning effort. Next steps with the plan. Staff is working to compile all the data we received from the summer engagement, and we are finalizing public meeting dates, times, and locations for the next phase of the plan in November. We're hoping for an in-person open house. We are exploring our options given the uncertainties we are dealing with due to the pandemic. More details will be announced in the next coming weeks. The third thing that was discussed at the Planning Stakeholders Relations Committee was Safe to Go campaign. Jim Ritchie presented the Safe to Go, which is a marketing campaign aimed to educate riders on the steps we are taking to keep them safe. Our website provides a variety of content, including in-depth details on our cleaning process, as well as the video on the importance of wearing masks. You will see this campaign in various places out in the community, throughout the Port Authority system and online. We are inviting customers with questions to reach out to us by calling customer service, engaging on Twitter, or using live chat on our website. I'd like to also then report out on the CAT and ACTC. The Committee for Accessible Transportation did not hold any regular scheduled meeting during the month of October. The committee was provided with updates related to the Port Authority activities and items of interest by email. The next regularly scheduled CAT quarterly meeting will be held on November 12th from 5:30 to 7:30 via Microsoft Teams. The agenda has not yet been finalized. The Allegheny County Transit Council had their monthly meeting October 21st from 5:30 to 7 on Microsoft Teams. The council was provided with an in-depth update on COVID-19 policies and procedures throughout the Port Authority system and on access. The next regular scheduled ACTC meeting will be held November 18th from 5:30 to 7:30 on Microsoft Teams. If there are no questions, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Tegg? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee from that chair, Ann O'Gore. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair and fellow board members. The Finance Committee met virtually on Thursday, October 15th. At the meeting, Chief Financial Officer Peter Shank reported on the September financial statements. He reported that for the month of September, total operating income was $5.6 million under budget, and passenger revenues were $4.9 million under budget due to lower ridership caused by the pandemic. Access shared ride revenues were also under budget due to lower ridership as well. Total advertising revenues were $133,686 under budget due to lower advertising commitments. Interest income was below budget due to lower interest rates. Total operating income for the first quarter of the fiscal year was $16.7 million under budget. Mr. Shank noted that this shortfall would indirectly be covered by CARES Act funding. Next, Mr. Shank reported that total expenses for the month were $2.38 million under budget, primarily due to lower expenses in employee benefits, materials, and supplies. For the first quarter, every expense category other than salary and wages were below budget. Total subsidy for September was $28.7 million below budget due to the receipt of state operating assistance in August versus the budgeted month of September. Finally, Mr. Shank reported that the authority ended the month of September with $141.1 million in operating reserves. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. And are there any questions? Okay, then with that, we'll move on to the report of the Technology Committee from its chair, Jen Liptak. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me switch screens here. Good morning. The Technology Committee met on Thursday, October 15th, and I just have one item for the board's consideration. The procurement bid as presented to the committee is for the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, including software assurance. The committee found the bids to be in accordance with the authority's procurement policies and procedures and the prices to be fair and reasonable and consistent with the budgeted funds, The Technology Committee recommends to award the bid to Soft Choice Corporation in the estimated amount of $970,056.36 over a 3-year period. My fellow members, I respectfully request the board approve this resolution.
Austin, can you make that motion?
So moved.
Michelle, can you second it?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And lastly, in recognition of National Cybersecurity Month, Jeff Nichols, Information Security Manager, provided examples of the recent cyber attacks that continue to become more common in both our business and private lives. He included tips and ideas on how to remain vigilant against these attempts on our data and privacy. And I did want to, again, commend the back office people. We have front of house, which I think are our forward-facing people, our bus drivers, customer service, and then the back of house people, IT, finance, policy, HR, et cetera, for everyone doing a great job in supporting one another during this time. If there's no questions, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Ms. Liptak? Okay, then that is the report of all the committees. Is there any new business? Okay, in that case, we will move on to public comment. Remind the speakers of our 3-minute limitation, and our first speaker is Laura Weens for Pittsburghers for Public Transit.
Hi, I'll just speak very briefly to say our appreciation that the Port Authority is looking to reallocate service in November to ensure that there's no crowding and pass-ups for riders that are taking transit during the pandemic, and that the additional weekend service or the addition of weekend service to a lot of local routes will be life-changing for so many communities. And I want to also express appreciation for Representative Davis, who has helped in conversations around ensuring that riders have good access in Duquesne, particularly as the Shop and Save has closed. So that's it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is Edward Zakreski on the Campus Vote Project.
Hi, I'm Eddie Zakreski. I'm a senior at Duquesne University. I also would just like to thank you for everything you do. I'm initially from Fairfax, Virginia, outside of DC. And I mean, I don't think it comes as a...
We lost you, Ed.
Sorry, am I still there? All right, it's a lot more efficient in public transit once you leave DC. But I just wanted to come to you today to suggest, even if it's not a change that can happen this year, considering in future years, allowing one free ride round trip on voting day in order to encourage voter turnout.
Is that the end of your remarks?
That's the end of my remarks, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for there are no other speakers scheduled. And so with that, we'll conclude the meeting. The next regular meeting is scheduled for November 20th. Everybody go out there, be safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you then. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, everyone.
Thank you.